Okay, so picking up right where we left off, as I said at the end of the last video, we're going to add the functionality where if you click on a bin, the food will show up either on the board or on the grill. So let's actually start with the hamburger first. That's a little bit simpler, whereas the bun is multiple piece, and we have to do a little bit more with positioning there. So in the last video, I said to change the scale factor to 200 because the default value of 1 was way too small. And indeed, 1 is way too small, but based on the size of everything else that I have here, 200 is actually too big. So my apologies. Please take a minute to click on each object and change that scale factor to 100. As you can see, they're all set to 100. With the exception of the crate, that one's not changing. So now what we want is we want to be able to click on the crate, which means it's going to have to be click functionality. We'll get to that in a minute. And we need this to get instantiated, or another word that's used in game, and spawned. We need to get the burger to spawn or instantiate on the right position on the grill. Eventually, what we're going to have to do is we basically create a mini inventory system, because say you have 4 or 6 areas on this grill. If you have something on spot 1, 2, 3, and then you move spot 1, really you want your next burger to show up in spot 1. Basically, you want to fill up the first available slot. So we basically have to create a mini inventory system to make this work long term. But that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. Right now, we just want to be able to click on this and have the burger appear over there. So we have to turn this model into an object. Just as we started to turn these into objects, they are now, because it does have a transform component, but it's going to need more than just that. So let's take our burger, or should I say the patty, we'll put it into the environment. We will bring that to, say, -5. Now we can just kind of move this around. Exact positioning isn't that important right now. We're just trying to get a feel for what good numbers would be on the grill. So it looks like 1, 0, and how's -5? 5, can't do that. So about -5, 7. Looks okay. And actually, the vertical position won't matter too much, because what we're going to do is we will rely a little bit on gravity, more than likely. That way, when you stack the various parts of the hamburger together, gravity will keep it together. But we'll see. So what we need now is we need this to appear here. So we have an object, but we need it to appear once you click on the bin. So let's take that burger patty, we put it back down here, but do not get it confused with this one. This, okay, this is the actual this is the one that we refer to as a prefab, because when you have this one clicked, it's just the model. This one actually has the transform component on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. So right click, create folder. And what we'll do is we'll call this one models. So even though you probably could put them into their corresponding folder, those are really the textures and the material. So this one will be for models. And we'll go ahead and put that one in there. That way we don't confuse the model, we don't confuse the model with the actual prefab. So what we're going to do is we'll do the same thing with these other pieces as well. Okay, so now we have a burger. We want to be able to click on this and have the burger appear. So with this crate selected, go to Add Component, go to Physics, and go to Box Collider. So now this will detect collisions. It'll also detect a mouse click. So right-click, Create, Script. Most of your functionality is going to be handled by script. So you can place things visually in your scene, but as far as the actual functionality, it's going to be the script. So we'll call this let's call this burger crate. Now you could have a single script handle all of them, but if you do that, then you have to check the name of each bin. So you're trading complexities. You either have more scripts that are simple or less scripts that are more complicated. It's really arbitrary. It depends how you think and depends what makes sense to you. So we have our crate. We put our script on it, so you can see that's a new component now. We open up that script. To zoom in, hold Control and scroll the scroll wheel on the mouse up. Just clear that message. So now what we want to do is, for want of a better term, we need the crate to be aware of the burger. So to do that, you create a variable, and that variable will get linked to this. Now, we're going to get rid of this one in a minute because we really don't want it to be there. We're just holding it here because this is showing us the coordinates. But yeah, I don't want to confuse anyone. This one will go away, and we want to link it to the prefab. I've said that term a few times. Not sure if I defined it in the first term in the first video, but the prefab is basically the object that has all the various components on it. That way you can just keep instantiating that object. You don't have to keep recreating it from scratch. So yeah, so this is the one we're going to link to, not that one. All right, so this script is attached to the crate. So what do we want to do? We want to public transform, capital T, and we'll call this burger patty obj. So basically, the entire naming scheme is arbitrary. I suppose you could just call it burger, but we really want to identify the fact that it's the burger patty, and by putting obj, it lets me know that when I see this variable pop up in a list, I know that it's an object, that it's not just a number or a string. So again, arbitrary, but these naming conventions do help. So if we save this, watch what happens. So we go to crate. Crate has the script attached, and there's that new variable. So again, we don't want to use this one here. We want to use this burger, and we put it there. So now this object is aware of this object, and it can do things with it as far as instantiate it. So this is an iterative process. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to undo in a few minutes, but I just want to lead you up to what's working. So outside of start, outside of update, so void on mouse down, and although it only says on mouse down, it's the left click. If you want to do a right click down on something, well, you kind of have to fudge it because there's not a predefined way of doing it. You actually have to check a couple different things for a right mouse click. So, what do we want to happen? Well, first, whenever you're doing any kind of new functionality like this, because it's so easy for it to not work, and I don't mean that it's unstable, it's just if say you make this is case sensitive. So if you make the M small, you don't get an error message, it just doesn't work. So again, it's not that it's unstable, it's just so easy to get wrong, and Unity doesn't tell you that it's wrong. So whenever you're doing any kind of collision or anything like that, I strongly recommend testing it. So debug.log click. You could put success, doesn't matter. Okay, so the script is attached to the crate. The crate has a collider, which is required to detect a mouse click. If you click on that object, then in the debug log, the word click should appear. Where's the debug log? It's down here. So let's give it a try. Okay, click did not work. That's why we test these things. Go to console just to make sure it's not there. So for crate, we added the box collider. So let's edit that. So you can see the box collider is dead center. It's this tiny little thing. That's why it did not work. So let's make this size 15, 5, 15. So you can see that's much more appropriate. Still not quite right. So 17. We just don't want it to come over into our other box. Okay, so there's, all right. So if you grab the little dot, it's a little imprecise, but you can manually stretch this out. This actually goes down too far. So what we could do is we can raise the center up a little bit more. How does 3 sound? Looks good. So let's try it again now. Perfect. So the problem is the first time the collider was way, way too small. So always double check that. Always make sure that the collider is actually appropriate size for the object. So now what we're going to do is now we want it to actually instantiate that object, the burger. So instantiate. So when you're using instantiate, there's 3 things you have to declare. What is being instantiated, where it's being instantiated, and its rotation. So what is being instantiated is that object, burger, patty, obj. And see, this is what I was talking about. When your program, your game gets much, much larger, you're going to have hundreds of these variables showing up. Just by seeing that obj, I'm like, oh, that's the object. The second, as I said, the second argument that has to be declared is the location. This can be very simple. This can be very complex. I can use another object's position by just dropping in the name of that object dot position, or I can actually spell out the position. So I could do new vector 3. And as I said, this is why we're holding on to this, is for that location. So 1, 0, negative 5.7. So 1, 0, negative 5.7. And as you can see, it mirrors it. Just as it's XYZ, here in new vector 3, it's also XYZ. And since it's a decimal, we have to drop in the letter F because we're letting Unity know that it's a float. And then we comma. So it looks a little bit weird, but this is just one value, so to speak, one argument. So this is where it's, this is what is being instantiated. This is where it's being instantiated. And now the rotation. So we're going to have the burger patty use its own rotation. So the rotation of the burger patty is the third argument. So now, instead of saying click, the burger should appear at that location. So we save. And now we can delete this one here since we no longer need it. So again, quick recap. When this gets clicked on, this object is going to get instantiated there if I didn't make any mistakes. And sure enough, there it is. So that is really the key functionality of so much of what you're going to do. Because you're going to click on crates and the things are going to appear. You're going to click on, say, a ketchup dispenser and the ketchup is going to appear. You're going to click on, say, cheese and the cheese will appear. So you've already mastered a very key functionality to make this work. So basically combining that with, as I said, a very light inventory system, because ultimately the cutting board and the grill, essentially they're acting like backpacks. They're acting like a mini inventory system. And so combining this with that inventory system, that's like 90% of the game. You have a few other things such as checking what you've made versus what the customer wants, but sometimes it's very important to realize that as much as the game may seem complex, it's actually a very small group of functionalities that just get applied and reapplied slightly differently. So this is only just so good because it puts it into a fixed location. So if, say, you can only make one hamburger at a time because you only have a frying pan, this would work. But since you can place multiple hamburgers, then we're basically, as I said, going to have to replace this really quickly and replace it with an actual inventory system. Don't want to start the inventory system in this one, though, because if I do that, it's going to make this video really, really long. So instead, let's work on cheese. So let's take the cheese model, put it into the scene. Again, we'll move this so we can see it. Now we said that it was 1, 0, negative 5.7. So 1, 0, negative 5.7. Because of the way it was created, this has a different center point, so it's already slightly higher. So I'm thinking this actually might already be in the right place. So let's just give this a try. And we click. Yeah, see, it's already above it. So it won't necessarily work like that for you depending on how you make your models. So because of how this model was created, it was already proportionately higher than the hamburger. Now that doesn't necessarily matter because, as I said, we're probably going to apply gravity. So ultimately things will drop into place anyways. Okay, so what we want to do is we have the cheese selected. So add component, physics, box collider. So again, this should look familiar. And let's do this one more time. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a prefab. So we take the cheese, we drop it here. We now have a prefab. So we want to take the model. And again, you can tell which one is the model because it has the model properties. We'll put that into the model. And so now have an increasing amount of prefabs here. We will get rid of the cheese. And what we'll do is we'll put cheese in another bin. However, we will wait till the next video to do that because that is going to take the functionality that we just made, and that is the clicking of the bin, and add another step to it. So right now, you click on this bin, it instantiates or spawns a hamburger. You're going to click on this bin, and then you're going to have to click on the hamburger to transfer the cheese to it. So basically, you're going to have this functionality where your mouse pointer will put cheese if you click on a hamburger with the next click. So since that's really a different type of functionality, I think this is a good place to stop, and then we'll pick it up in the next one.